Welcome to another episode of the Wandering Watercolor. Let's paint. Okay, so this is the second page of the Jungle Animals Watercolor Coloring book. It's just a nice, cute little giraffe taking a nibble from a tree. As always, you need your brush. Any brush works. It doesn't matter what brush it is. Your paint palette, this is the one that I'm making myself, and I'm still in the process of tweaking it, but hopefully by the time you see this, I'll have it available for purchase. But if you have your own palette, it's totally fine. Any watercolor paint works. Honestly, any paint works because the paper is good quality. Palette, or a plate. Any plate works to mix your colors. I use this little soap dish, little porcelain soap dish, just because they're very cheap. You can find them at any home goods store, and they're excellent for mixing colors because you can see the colors as you're mixing them. 2 jars of water on the side, a paper towel. That's really all you need. So we can go ahead and get started. First thing, just like the first page, we're going to need a good amount of yellow. And so basically I'm just grabbing the yellow and adding water. We do want to have a lot mixed up on the count of this is a large area to cover. Usually whenever I'm mixing a color, I always want to think about how much I need to cover whatever it is that I'm painting. And so with this one, we're going to imagine that the light source is coming kind of like from the upper right corner, kind of like down this way. And the first thing that we want to do is block in the base color of the giraffe. So there's 2 main colors in a giraffe, which are yellow and orange. And since yellow is the lighter of those 2 colors, we want to put down that one first to cover the area, so that when we do the second one, the darker color for the spots, it'll be easier to layer, because if you try to layer the lighter on top of the darker, you can't really do that with watercolor. So this looks like a pretty sufficient large mixture of paint. So we can just go ahead and start filling it in. It doesn't matter where you start off from. Just pick a spot and start filling it in. And you're not going for any textures or fading of this color. Really all you're doing is blocking it in. You're just establishing the base value. So that's pretty straightforward. Just keep doing all of that, just filling in where the ears are. Now, whenever I was making these images, I intentionally made the spots kind of like a gray area. And the reason for that is, when we mix up the brown, because it's a very light gray, it'll cover it just fine, but also you know exactly where to go, and it actually helps with the shading aspect. But you'll see what I mean about all that as we progress through the painting. Right now I'm just really trying not to go outside of the lines, but if you do, it's not the end of the world, especially since yellow is such a light color. You can easily cover it with, whenever we start doing the background, we can kind of hide any mistakes. So this is really a good color to start with for the base painting. Now, once we're done covering this in, what we'll do is we'll focus on the tree, because before we add the spots, we want this to dry, because we don't want the spots to start spilling out. We don't want them to run. So since all of this is wet right now, we do want to give it a moment to dry. So I'm just going to rinse my brush. And then grab a little bit of the burnt umber, which is more of like an earthy brown. If you're using my palette, I tend to use a lot of pigment, which when it gets impacted in there, it kind of makes it difficult to tell some of like what color is what. Like these two browns look very similar, so just making a little mark on your scrap piece of paper can actually be very helpful for that. But basically, we want to grab a bunch of the burnt umber, and we can also throw in a little bit of burnt sepia in there, and then that's a pretty good, I would say that's a pretty good wood color. And then just add some water, because we do want to have sufficient enough mixture to cover the entirety of the tree. I'm gonna grab a little more of the sepia there, and then just start filling it in, just where the branches are. I'm just using primarily the very tip of the brush, because that helps keep the brush stroke thin. Now, whenever we do the leaves, it's going to get a little more chaotic, because we're going to use two different techniques for painting in the leaves. Part of the reason is there's quite a bit of chaos to trees. When you zoom in, they're very intricately organized, but as much of Mother Nature from a distance, it looks chaotic, and when you zoom in, you see all the structures and how things are organized. So here I'm just slowly filling in those branches, going little by little, and then blending it in when at the point where they meet. There we go. There we go. And then also a little bit down here at the bottom. Don't want to forget that. And then rinse my brush. Dry it off. And before we continue on to the spots in the giraffe, what we want to do is we're just going to grab a bunch of green and then mix it up here on the side. Get a good amount of water. And so the way that we're going to do the leaves here on the tree that the giraffe is eating from, we're not going to go in and paint every single one of them individually, for two reasons. That would take too long, and the second reason being is that the paint will dry as we're doing it, and then we'll have to rehydrate it or get more, and we can get some it'll just make it more difficult, and we don't want any clumping of the pigment. So what we're just going to do is the color that we have here, I'll go ahead and just kind of outline everything as if it's you're just imagining kind of how the tree would look from a distance, kind of like those clumps of leaves. Now, for the leaves that are coming out of the giraffe's mouth, we are going to go in individually. That's just because there's only 3 of them. And the rest, if we overlap a little bit of the tree, that's fine. We're just kind of filling that in like that. Like that. I'm gonna wet my brush a little bit. Let's see, I ended up needing more paint. That's one of the tricky things about watercolor paintings. You want to make sure that you have enough of the color that you're using mixed up. And basically, there we go, like that. filling all that in. Okay. I'm gonna rinse my brush. And actually I might add a little bit more over here just so that it doesn't look like so cut in. There we go. I'm gonna rinse my brush. And then I'm just gonna feel, okay, so yeah, the giraffe is pretty much dry now. So for the next part, we'll grab a little more green, or yellow, I mean. Get a little more yellow here. And grab a little bit of the lighter brown, or the sepia. Kind of mix it in. And just a little bit of red, not a lot. You don't want too much, just a little bit of red. And just kind of mix all those together. A little more sepia, and a little more water. Because especially since the spots on the giraffe, they have a little bit of orange to them, but they're actually more on the brown side. If you look up any pictures of a giraffe, you'll notice that they do have a little orange, but they lean more towards the brown. So that's perfectly fine right there. And now we can go ahead and just start filling in the spots wherever you see them. I'm actually going to start with the head. So because the head here actually has a little bit more of a different pattern. So what we'll do is we'll go like this. So we're not entirely just filling in the spots. There is a little bit of a variation. So the little horns here, we're going to fill those in. The little hump over here. And then kind of do a line going all the way down to where the snout is, and just paint all of that in. And then from there, going backwards, we're just going to do some spots, kind of slowly coming out of that. A little bit here and there. Definitely the spots that are already marked on the paper. A little bit underneath the ear, like that. And then coming out here. The bottom lip as well. We want to make sure we get that. And then just start filling in the rest of the spots. Like that, like that. And again, if you go outside of the spots, that's totally fine. They don't have to be perfect. You're just kind of generally following where they are. But you can see as you fill them in, because there's already the gray in there, it really helps. It adds a lot to the contrast. So it does aid in the look. And I did several tests whenever I made this image. I did some prints without the spots filled in, and it actually became kind of confusing while you're painting it. So this actually does help also just for the process itself. And then just keep filling in the spots, just one by one. Also remember, it's perfectly fine if you want to step back for a little bit, if you just want to look at it at any point. If you feel like the painting's not going well, and that's for any painting, just as a rule of thumb, you can always just sit back or stand back a little bit and just look at your artwork. I know that I tend to get hyper-focused on whatever portion I'm working on. And being able to step back and look at the whole thing often brings things into perspective, which helps me usually immediately identify where I'm messing up, or if I need to back off of something, or if I need to adjust something else. Okay. Just all the little spots like that. And the big spots. And you can tell it's a deceptively large area to paint. That's why I had mixed up such a large quantity, and it still may not be enough. I still may need to mix up a little more. The thing is, I always try to mix up a lot because getting the exact same mixture in watercolor twice is almost impossible, because of how fluid and chaotic the medium itself is. I mean, you can get very close, but you will get some inconsistencies. Granted, most people probably won't notice them even, but if somebody is a trained artist, they can notice them. That being said, sometimes it can actually add to the piece. Having a little more variation is not necessarily a bad thing. Okay. Now, a lot of these in this book that we're painting are much more controlled. Kind of like this one, you can tell that I'm not really doing splatters or loose washes or any of that. And that's entirely dependent on the level of detail that an image has. Now, if I have a sketch that I'm working off of and I'm just building on top of that, then you don't necessarily need to have as much control. But when all of the line work is all laid out like this, and you know exactly where you're going, it can make it very chaotic if you're just... it can actually make the whole thing look just weird if you're not really comfortable with doing splatters and washes and all that. So as you can tell, as of right now, it looks very cartoony, and that's totally fine. The more we sculpt out or I should say, the more that we put in the shadows and the layering of colors, the more realistic it'll start to look. So now we're going to get a little bit of the brown, either brown or whatever you're using, whatever brown you have in your palette. Just get some brown, mix it in with the green. And this is going to be the color for the background trees. Since they are further away, we do want those to be darker. So we're gonna fill that in like that. Fill all of that in. And then we're just gonna leave it. Now rinse our brush. And now we can go ahead and mix up the grass. So we're gonna get some green and yellow, get them together, maybe a little more yellow, like that. And then just fill in the bottom. Going down, filling all that in. All that. Okay. There we go. Rinse my brush. Now grab a little more of the green up here and get some water. Mix that up nicely, and then get a little bit of the red, or not the red, the brown, And actually I'm going to get more green. Actually need a good amount more green. This is the shadow color that we're mixing up for the tree. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So now we're just gonna go ahead and kind of move like this, like making little U's basically, just to create some shadow and texture, and lay all of that in like that. More on the bottom part, like that. Back here, and just kind of imagining, because the light is coming this way, so I'm just kind of imagining where there would be more shadow, less shadow, that type of thing. Maybe a little bit here, like that. All of this, and kind of fading it out to the right. There we go. And rinse my brush. And then while all of that dries, then I can go ahead and just grab some more green, more just direct green, and just use that to make to fill in these little strokes down here, the little blades of grass. Just little brush strokes just to fill them in and to add a little more variation, make it look more interesting. Like that. Okay. I missed my brush. And the next thing is I want to grab the burnt umber and kind of mix some of that up. And add a little bit to on the tree, going more on the left side as a shadow and to show a little bit of texture in the tree, so it's not just a flat surface. Makes it a little more interesting to look at. Like that. There we go, and rinse my brush. And so the next portion, before we move into fill in all of the shadows on the giraffe, what we want to do is we want to fill in the sky. So for that, we're just going to do the same thing as the previous one, where we're just getting some blue. Whatever blue you have will work just fine. But if it's a darker blue, you want to add a lot of water because you want to make it lighter. And adding water to any color makes it more transparent, therefore lighter. And so that's what I'm doing here, just kind of filling in the background color for the sky, like that. This time I'm not really trying to add any texture. I just want it to be more of a kind of a flat wash finish on the sky, just so that it's nice, so that it's filled in and it's not really distracting in any way. And if I need to, I could always just add a little more paint or a little more water, get that mixture going. And just go in, a little water. Like that. And continue on to this side, get a little bit of paint, fill that in, some water. There we go. Down here as well. And rinse my brush. And maybe dry it off a little and then pick up some of the excess. Since this side is looking a little dark, that's okay though. There we go. Lighten it up a little. And remember, all watercolor paint dries lighter anyway. And so the last portion is we want to get a little bit of purple. And the reason being is purple is complementary to yellow, and so that's what we'll be using to establish the shadow. Also a little bit of the brown, maybe the dark brown. Definitely a good amount of water, since we do have, again, a large area to cover. So a little bit of purple, a little bit of the light brown. Just kind of mix it together so that we can kind of get a nice coherent shadow color. Add water, and then repeat, add more purple, and more of the light brown. Kind of mix them together. And so this mixture looks dark, but because there's a lot of water, it actually comes out pretty transparent, which is what we want. And so the first thing that we want to do here is on the left side of the little horns, we're going to add a little bit of a shadow like that. Then here, the little hump that's on the head, and then a little bit kind of like showing the texture here. And then just remember that this is it will dry much lighter. It looks highly pigmented right now because of the we're putting a lot down, but when it dries, it'll look much lighter. So just adding some shadow here, a little bit here. Definitely a little bit above the eye. Below the eye, like that. The ear. Maybe fade out some of that, like that. A little bit underneath, like that. Here, the folds of the skin. And then on this side of the neck, just all the way down, like that. A little bit here. And a little bit here. All on this side. Going down like that. Going down on this side. The front leg. And here. On the other side. Fill that in. And most of this side too, just kind of filling it in like that. And maybe pick up a little bit of the excess, but this looks fine. Rinse my brush and then step back for a moment. And okay, yeah, I think that's pretty much done. Okay, yeah, thank you for sticking with me through that one. I know that one was a little more complex than the previous one. That one took 30 minutes. So that was 30 minutes. If you have any questions, just shoot me a message, email, whatever works. I usually respond within 24 hours. And with that, I will see you on the next one.